All right, welcome back to the Contrarians. My name is Martin Popoff. We've got a great cast here. This is going to be a dark horse panel. We've got Rich, we've got Matt, we've got Bill. We're going to be looking at the Blue Oyster Cult album Club Ninja. This is definitely a dark horse. You know, we had that whole discussion about what is a dark horse kind of thing, but I guess this fits some of the definitions. I guess we'll know by the end of it if it's the kind of dark horse that's seen as super favorable in the final analysis sort of thing. But yeah, it was definitely contentious. It's still contentious at the time. It's a very commercial and keyboardy album with kind of strange production and in a weird sort of spot for them when the fame is starting to go downhill pretty fast. It stays downhill basically from here on out. I mean, the glory days are kind of over, but it comes between the Revolution by Night. It's 1986, and then we've got the sort of hackneyed Imaginos album in '88 and onwards sort of thing. But yeah, this will be fun talking about this. Two of these gentlemen here were part of this book. Which is a panel discussion book about every Blue Oyster Cult album. There you go. And I believe both of you were on Club Ninja. So this is going to read like a live version of the chapter from this book. There you go. And this is available now. You can get this at martinpopoff.com, and we're working on some other panel books as we go. But of course, the album we are talking about here is Club Ninja. And I'm just going to go around the bend here, and let's talk to Bill first. Bill, give us your impression of this album, and then I guess rate it at the end.
All right. I deliberately did not reread our chapter on Club Ninja in the book because I wanted to compare. Obviously, I just read it when it came out a couple months ago, but so certain things are still in my mind to a degree. But yeah, I wanted to be as fresh as possible. Okay. So I think as a dark horse contender, this isn't so much a dark horse in the sense of this should be considered the best or one of the best albums in the catalog. I think it's more of a dark horse in the sense of this is traditionally at the bottom of many fans' list. Not mine, but it always seems to be at or near the bottom traditionally among hardcore fans. So I think just being a fan of this album at all is a bit of a dark horse sort of thing for Blue Oyster Cult fans. Some people absolutely hate it. I'm not one of those. This is right up my alley. The time this came out, you're looking at a lot of those bands that were around for a number of years prior to these, the mid 80s big keyboard days. Rush put out Power Windows. It was kind of a one-off. Priest put out Turbo, which was kind of a one-off. And for BOC, of course, Club Ninja fit right in that wheelhouse with these guys. And a lot of old fans hated these albums. Well, I'm a fan of Power Windows and Turbo also, so you can see where I'm going here. I like the fact that this album is apparently a random collection of songs that were thrown together with all these outside songwriters, and yet it sounds like an actual complete album, like a thematically consistent, almost concept album. Okay. I do recall in the book I discussed the idea that the theme is violence. And if you really pay attention to the lyrics in these songs, there's violence all throughout this album. And that really brings all the songs together, even though we have so many different lyricists here. We have a couple from the classic. Well, we've got a Perlman lyric, When the War Comes, which I hadn't quite noticed earlier, but all the hardcore fans are going to have Albert's trilogy here that he's done of Imaginos. He did in the second one here what he called When War Comes, as opposed to When the War Comes. And I noticed the lyrics, the song was credited to Joe Bouchard and Sandy Perlman, just like on Club Ninja, but the lyrics were substantially changed in many places, which I thought was kind of cool. I don't know if Albert did that himself or if maybe Sandy's original lyrics were much more expansive. Maybe one of you gentlemen could have more info on that. I'd be very interested. And of course, the Meltzer Well was, I think that is Endless. We have Spy in the House of the Night, which also, the Buck Dharma Archives, Buck had a demo on here of that song. So it had been around for a while. If you listen to the demo, I think it's a little more cheesy than the final version. there's a bit of cheese to this album, no matter. That's just part of the era and the sound, and I'm okay with it. But that Meltzer well, I think, is never going to run dry. I think we're going to be seeing Albert Bichard's descendants 100 years from now if the world is still churning. Here's a brand new lyric by Robert Meltzer. Okay, cool. If I'm still alive by some miracle, a head preserved in a jar, I'll be here for it. Yeah. All right. There's another one, this is also from the archives, the Red and Black, which was the Don Roser, Ron Riddle, and John Rogers trio that kind of played around for a few years there in the lost years, so to speak. And I listened to their version of Perfect Water earlier for the first time in a long time. And the thing that really stood out about that version compared to the Club Ninja is Ron Riddle's drums were way forward in the mix. And it was kind of startling, really. Mm-hmm. I think I still prefer the Club Ninja version, but it was kind of cool to have that alternate that was so radically different in a certain way. Really, there are the Bob Halligan lyrics. Yeah, beat 'em up. It's not the greatest lyric. In fact, it's kind of a terrible lyric overall, but again, it fits the theme. So I can just enjoy it as it goes in the way that I would enjoy Let Go on Revolution by Night. Let's just go with it. Suck that cheese down and enjoy the flavor. His Make Rock Not War. Outside of the chorus, I think that lyric is better. Again, it goes to the themes of violence. If you just take that cheesy chorus out of your mind, I think it's actually a pretty decent little anti-war protest song. Dancing in the Ruins, yeah, total outside riders again. This thing should have been a much bigger hit than it was. If you look, I know Martin talks about the cabal of Blue Oyster Cult lyricists, and I don't think that ever really stopped, even though some of these guys only have one or two moments on Blue Oyster Cult albums. If you really dig through the lyrics, they all have a certain weirdness for the most part that seems to fit with the Blue Oyster Cult vibe, and Dancing in the Ruins is no exception to that. And it was perfect for the era, this whole post-apocalyptic thing that unfortunately, without getting into any details, because we're not that kind of channel, I'm going to just say that our world today fits these lyrics every bit as much as it did back in 1986. So the themes of violence and war are extremely relevant now, even though sonically the album is very much landlocked in time. Back in the Reagan era, it's one of those joyous 80s artifacts that anybody who has paid attention to me over the time I've been doing these shows knows that I'm a big fan of. Somebody has to love these things, so it might as well be me. I was wanting to rate this thing a little lower initially, but then I put it on and say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and give it an 8.
Okay.
Because even though individual parts may be a little creaky and weak, I like the fact that it holds together so well as an album. And I'm rating it not so much for the individual songs as I am as an entire album. I think as a complete concept, as one piece where all the songs fit together, I think this is one of the strongest examples of that in the catalog, even though other albums may have stronger individual songs. So, yeah, I still love it. I don't think it'll ever be in my top 5, but I would never be without it.
Yeah. Interesting. You know, that the hanging together thing is interesting because I think of which ones really don't hang together. We know Imaginos doesn't hang together very well, but I don't think even Agents of Fortune doesn't really feel like it hangs together very well. It sounds like a big collection of songs, right?
I agree.
Kind of interesting. Yeah. Okay, let's actually go to Rich. Matt, we'll bring you in last. I know you'll have some really cool stuff to say, but yeah, Rich, take it away.
So I'm going to kind of promote my book a little bit here, but I have a book coming out in the middle of December called I Must Fix My Hair, It Is Broken. And about 30% of it is me talking about music and ranking albums. And the other 70% is poetry and weird, funny stuff that I've written. And one of the last things I wrote for the book, I was doing a 4-part series about the Blue Öyster Cult albums up to Imaginos. And I got stuck when writing about Club Ninja. I was like, I got stuck for 2 weeks, and then actually while watching Talking Heads stop making sense, for some reason I thought, oh, wait a second, okay, I know what to do. So I finished it, and the deadline was the next day. So I managed to get it finished off in time. But I've always liked the album. I don't think the cover is one of their better ones. I mean, compared to like some of their other artwork, like the first album, I think is probably my favorite album cover. Agents of Fortune, Spectres. I love the Revolution by Night cover. I think that's really good. Yeah, I actually think it's a decent record. I know that, you know, some people don't like the fact that they use so many outside songwriters on it, you know, including Bob Halligan Jr. for 2 songs. And those 2 songs, I don't think they're bad songs, really. I just think they would have fit in better on a Def Leppard or Scorpions album. Not up to the usual intelligent lyrics that Blue Öyster Cult have. But I think they're both decent songs, and I really like the first 2 songs, especially White Flags. To me, that's probably my favorite song off the album. I love the refrain. I love Eric Bloom singing for it, how he goes up an octave on the chorus. And yeah, I think it's a really good song. And Dancing the Ruins, I like quite a bit. Make Rock Not War, I kind of like that lyric. And the fools rush in, don't they? I don't know, for some reason I've always liked that. The rest of side 1 is okay. Perfect Water is a good song. Spy in the House of Night is decent. And then side 2, Beat 'em Up, I mean, that's kind of like a dumb song, but it's definitely not, up to the intelligence of earlier Blue Öyster Cult albums, but I don't think it's that bad. Probably my least favorite song is When the War Comes. And I didn't realize for the longest time that's Howard Stern on the intro for that. But I find it probably one of the least interesting songs on the album. The last 2 songs I like quite a bit. Shadow Warrior, I think that's a really good song. I like Eric Bloom kind of singing in his upper register, like out of his comfort range. And I think that's a pretty good song. I love the last song, Madness to the Method. To me, that musically sounds a little bit like early Journey, like pre-Steve Perry, and maybe a little bit of Rush. And I love the opening lyric. A rock never comes through a window with a kiss. Rhyme and reason, never argue with a fist. I think those lyrics are really interesting. And that's actually the longest song that Blue Öyster Cult ever did. I think it's like 7 minutes and 7.5 minutes, and that's the longest studio track they've ever done. I like the production of the album. I think it's a better sounding record than Revolution by Night, even though I actually like the Revolution by Night better as an album. Yeah, I think it stood the test of time pretty well. It doesn't sound dated to me at all. The drums sound good. There's a good mix of keyboards and guitars. One thing it's lacking, though, I mean, it seems to be lacking like that old Blue Öyster Cult personality, and it's lacking some of the weirdness and the mysteriousness that went along with early Blue Öyster Cult. And I think, I think Albert Bouchard and Al Lanier kind of contributed to that weirdness a little bit. So I think they're definitely missed on this album. But I've always liked it. I actually think it's a pretty good record. My favorite Blue Öyster Cult album of the 80s is actually Revolution by Night, but I would say this may come in second for me. I like Fire of Unknown Origins, even though to me that felt like a bit of a sellout. It felt like, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a good album, but it just, yeah, it feels like they kind of sold out on that record. And Imaginos is a mess. That's just a messy record all in general. It's just, yeah. So I think in my book I gave it a 7, but I'm gonna up it to 7.5. I think it's a pretty good record.
All right. Well, thank you for that. We lost Bill. Hopefully he comes back, but I'm glad we got all that good yummy stuff from him anyways. So so we got what we needed. Let's turn it over to Matt. What do you think?
Thanks, Martin. So I did bring a prop, so I wanted to show. I saw them on the on that tour, and they had the tour program.
Oh, cool.
For that, which is pretty neat. But it's you know, they're kind of doing with the ninja theme, right? The somewhat Asian looking font for it. Probably a little bit of appropriateness going on there, but I think to look at the record, for me, they're going through an identity crisis at the time, and I think Joe Bouchard described it as a crisis of faith at the time. So you've got a lot of turnover going on around the brand personnel, right? So Rick Downey's out. You've got Albert comes in for a very brief tour leg that doesn't work out well for either parties, and then you've got Tommy Zvonchek coming in the band for keyboards. You've got Tommy Price playing the drums on the record, but then you've got Jimmy Wilcox. I think Tommy Price is not available to join the band, so you got Jimmy Wilcox joining to be the touring member of the band. So a lot of turnover, and then of course Joe's going to be out not too much long afterward. Bill made an interesting comment about sort of being thematic around violence. And to me, any theme was accidental, right? So with some of their other albums, I think there is consistent themes. You know, Spectres, they've talked about, you know, Albert's talked about how they were trying to have it be oriented around the night. And the first 3 records that are more Sandy Pearlman lyric oriented, you know, sort of do have a similar thematic feel. But I think this is just by accident that all these things kind of come together. And this is the press release that they did at the time. So this is the Columbia Records press release. So you can tell Sandy's trying to extract.
Bill's back.
Hey, Bill. Yeah. So Sandy's trying to extract a theme from this, but I think it's fairly fictitious, right? So he says, while nature's merciless seasons of fire and ice erupt in other settings, tearing worlds apart, the 5 masters of astronomy known as BÖC continue to withstand the elements in their nightly ritual of metallic force. So yeah. I think he's stretching there a little bit. I'm not sure that's a great description.
Stretching, he's basically getting everything wrong.
Exactly. And of course, their press releases were notorious for, you know, false information, right? So they overstated Eric's ability to speak Japanese during the tour of Japan, and you know the EP, the live bootleg EP, being the Maltese Falcon of heavy metal collectibles, but you know, it's not really that hard to get, and things like that. So there was always an appropriate level of PR exaggeration with their press releases. I find them very entertaining. But you know, with all those problems, it's a long gestation to make this record. They start playing songs from the record way before the record comes out. So the end of '84, they're playing Make Rock Not War. They play Beat 'Em Up in February of '85. Wings of Mercury, which I'll get to in a second, in February of '85, Spy in the House of Night in April, right? So by April, they're already playing 4 unreleased songs with an unsteady lineup. It's really interesting, right? So they're, I think, you know, trying to figure out who they're going to be in the '80s and with these changes. You ultimately get 3 different mixes of the record, right? So there's a Scandinavian mix, there's a UK mix. Those come out before the US. They actually, you know, end of '85. The US mix doesn't come out to '86. You get the Howard Stern intro on the early '80s, on the US version that's not on the other ones. And then just one other little sort of context setting. They bring in Phil Grant to play guitar and to basically be the Alan Lanier of guitar for the band, right? So Tommy Zvonchek's going to cover the keyboards. They bring Phil in. So there was a potential to actually be a 6-member BOC at that time. He comes into rehearsals, sees Tommy Zvonchek, says, "Oh, I know you," and walks out. And I get, they probably knew each other from Aldo Nova days. I don't know any of the backstory for that, but kind of interesting. Another one of those what would have been's there. And he is credited on appearing on the record. Jimmy Wilcox is credited as appearing on the record, even though it's mostly Tommy Price. He does a little extra percussion and he does some backup vocals. Okay, so we get a few comments just on a few of the songs. You guys did a great job covering them in detail. So I just had a couple of extra points. For White Flags, one of the things that I think to point out here is, of course, that was recorded by Legatt brothers, right? That's a cover song, right? That song existed. It was in a recorded format before. They stick to it's pretty close to the edited version of that. The LP's got a longer, more proggy version. Yeah. Blue Oyster Cult's a great cover band. They go way back to the pre-BOC days as, being a great cover band. They've always done interesting covers in concert, and they do a great job with White Flags. I do like how it does, even though they didn't write it, does have the line "Take Me Away" in there, so a little throwback to the Revolution by Night. So to me, that really works. But in the other ones, right, they're not collaborating with the cabal of writers like they did before, because in those cases, those are not outside music writers. Those are outside lyricists. And the Blue Oyster Cult members would get those lyrics, and then, not working with those lyricists at all, would write the music to those, right? In these cases, they're buying songs that other people have written. So the Halligan ones and Dancing in the Ruins, right? These are something other people wrote the lyrics and music. So it's not following the same sort of collaborative approach that I would say is a Blue Oyster Cult best practice, right? Like that's when they operate the best, is when they're just taking the lyrics, not really collaborating with the lyricist, and come up with their own interpretation of it. Yeah. You get one of those on the album, that's phenomenal, right? Perfect Water. You get the Jim Carroll lyric, and Buck writes it. That's another thing they overstate. In this, they're talking about in the press release how Buck pulls Jim Carroll away from his other projects to collaborate on this thing. And of course, he just had given them lyrics in the past, right? With through Alan Lanier probably, yeah. And Buck and Jim never spent any moment in a room together working on this. Yeah. But it works really great. It's kind of interesting. Jim Carroll had given the lyric to Ray Manzarek as well, and Ray Manzarek wrote music for it that Ray liked, and then when he heard that that he had also given it to BOC, and BOC was coming out with it on the record, he pulled it, and he liked the music that he did. He was not happy with Jim Carroll about that. Jim Carroll said that this version's pretty good. He felt Ray didn't get the essence of the lyrics, but thought that it sounded like that he felt that Buck did do a better job on that. Yeah, I love, Bill, what you said about the Red and the Black version of it. It is just crazy drumming, way up front, really busy. There's lead guitar in the intro and stuff like that. It is an interesting thing. I know that, again, when Sandy's kind of doing press for this, he's talked about, I think this is in your book, Martin, talking about sort of trying to make the alchemical connections to Perfect Water. And I think that's also a stretch. I don't buy that for a minute. That's not really what Jim Carroll writes about here, but, trying to make a tie. Yeah. Yet another one of these with the Richard Meltzer collaboration, so Spy in the House of Night. Again, Buck's just taking the lyrics, coming up with his own thing. What might be of interest to people, that's based on a poem that Richard Meltzer did, Out of Smokes. If you are interested in that, there's a recording of him reading the poem to music that came out on Mike Watt's collaboration with Richard Meltzer, called Spielgusher. So you can go ahead and hear that. It basically the part of the poem that he reads, it's just the first verse. It's fairly close to what's in there, but each, instead of flip side of desire, it says B side of desire. So just again, which he used, you know, in the Burning for You lyric that he gave Buck and everything. So that's kind of interesting. And you know, I know, Martin, you're a Minuteman Firehose Mike Watt fan. You know, Richard gave, around the time of this album, he gave Mike Watt and D Boon 10 songs to do for a Minuteman record, and they started working on. They came out with started working on music for it. D Boon dies before that ever happens, and so that Spielgusher album, which maybe around 2012, 2013, something like that, is when they finally get to do something. Music's not Minutemen music. They come up with, it's doing with a band called Migu, is doing the backup with Mike Watt. But it's very interesting, kind of a different use of those. One quick anecdote, so you get the two contradictory songs, Beat 'em Up and When the War Comes. And I saw them playing at a festival show, Summer Jam, before Club Ninja came out. And it was a big turnout, so 15,000 people, Kingston, New Hampshire, big biker crowd, very hot, a lot of fighting going on in the crowd. So there's 3 fights that happened right around me. And Eric tries to calm down the situation and says, you know, hey, you got to take care of each other. You know, we can't do the show if everyone's fighting and things like that. Tries to calm it down. And then 2 songs later goes, well, here's one coming up for our new album. Here's Beat 'em Up. So just like on the record, you get the full contradiction in the live performance. Bill, like, we may have lost him again, but you know, I like how he pointed out the difference in the Albert Bouchard version that's just come out for Imaginos 2. He's got Imaginos 3 out now, where he changes When the War Comes to When War Comes. I actually think that makes a big difference in the song. It makes it more universal. It plays into the time and timeless elements that are thematically appropriate for Imaginos. And the verse that they switch out much closer ties it to the theme. So it's kind of a head scratcher, especially since we never, at the time it came out, right? We don't know Imaginos the record, but we don't know any of the sort of later World War II type things that come into play in the story. So it substitutes. So the new words are, this trial of life will take us far, a limitless solution, minus time of alchemy, the mirror of power came to be, right? So tying into the magna of illusion, and again, this playing with time. So that one, to me, that's a much better coming together of that lyric. It's a more interesting, way more interesting arrangement than the Club Ninja version. Mm-hmm. Nice. And then for Shadow Warrior, just to point out that, you know, that was the lyrics, Eric von Lustbader. He had done the series of ninja books, and that's sort of a hot thing in the 80s in comic books and things like that. So they're playing into that. The music had originally been done for the Teachers movie soundtrack for a song called Rebel. They do 3 songs for that soundtrack. It doesn't get picked up. So this is like the heavy metal stuff for the heavy metal movie that they do for Fire of Unknown Origin. On that one, they at least get 1 song in here. Here, they don't get any of the songs. You can hear some of the 2 of the ones that don't make it on the Dead Ringer Electrocution of the Heart, which is Joe Bouchard record that he does with 2 of the Alice Cooper guys. And they changed the lyric to this more ninja-oriented lyric. And then the last song that I just wanted to bring up, sorry I'm rambling, but is Wings of Mercury. So they are, prior to Club Ninja coming out, they play Wings of Mercury in concert. They say it's going to be coming up on the album. For the times I saw them in that time period, it went over better than any of the other songs. It's kind of a boogie, but definitely rocking. It has a nice sort of music stop break where you get the Ride in the Wings of Mercury line that Eric sings. That always went over really well. It's kind of a biker lyric. They're at the time where they're playing these more like biker fest type shows and things like that. So it was going well, but it doesn't make it to the album. So it's kind of weird. Like we were all excited to hear how that was going to be recorded studio, and then it didn't make it on there. It was written by Carl Prakoda. So he's a member of Dream Syndicate. So the Dream Syndicate, Sandy Pearlman is producing the Dream Syndicate. They're California Paisley the band, kind of this new psychedelic alternative rock sound. He's producing them. So around the same time period, he does this Medicine Show record. Then they do a live one, which has got Tommy Zvanchek on keyboards. And so this sort of orbit of Sandy, the stuff that he's working on, probably more invested in that than he is on producing Club Ninja, is bringing in some of these other people into the band. And then Carl Prakota later on, a lot later on, he forms a band called Last Days of May. So he was this sort of maybe a closet Bluish Occult fan. It doesn't sound like Bluish Occult, but it's kind of interesting, these ties together. But we couldn't really get a recorded version of that until they were on the King Biscuit Flower Hour, because that was recorded early on, even though it was broadcast later. They were playing Wings of Mercury, so that was recorded there, and so we were able to trade that on tapes. And it wasn't until that Columbia Records box set came out where we got the Rarities disc, and then you can finally hear it's live, but it is a good version. And kind of wish they had done that. So anyways, those are I guess a few other factoids about the record. For me, that the lack of consistent conceptualness, the sort of identity crisis permeates the songs that are not really collaborations, that they're just buying songs, don't really work well for me. My Bluish Occult scale, I'm a fanatic. It goes from 7 to 10. So it's a 7 for me. It's at the, for me, this and Curse of the Hidden Mirror are the two least successful records in the catalog. I listened to it a lot at the time, though. Boy, I was playing it so much, right? We were so thirsty for anything BOC at the time.
Yeah. Nice. Wicked. That was awesome, Matt. That's great. That's some amazing information. I just want to bring up one thing that I remember, pointing out to you and having a discussion about. Some people might look at this record as a kind of like a off-focus attempt by an older generation to react and maybe participate in the hair metal end of things, right? But I almost look at this record as a 1982 record. To me, it feels like the album that should have been between Fire of Unknown Origin and Revolution by Night. And what I mean by that is that it sounds to me like the building blocks to hair metal rather than something actually in hair metal. So you get that changeover from sort of pomp rock to AOR. You've got Billy Squire and Sammy Hagar and Night Ranger and Loverboy and Donnie Iris. So you've got these hard rocky things, Foreigners in there as well. So you're getting a bunch of signals that are going to coalesce and build this hair metal thing. Not that the hair metal thing is influenced by that, but it feels like that there's this kind of unfocused, fuzzy formative stage to hair metal, and this feels like it belongs in that. And a metaphor for that is that the Legat album, actually, it's a double album, actually feels a little bit in that space as well. And with Legat, you also get the Canadianness of this, right? So I did a podcast episode called How Canada Invented Hair Metal, right? And it was this sort of lightning bolt idea that Canada had a lot of bands in that thing. They started off with Triumph and Prism and Trooper and moved into Loverboy and Headpins, and you had Lee Aaron in there in Toronto. And Loverboy's a very good connective tissue as well because of the Bruce Fairbairn thing, right? But this really feels quite a bit like a Canadian pre-hair metal album in a strange way. And it has to do with this sort of cloistered aseptic production values where everything's kind of high strung, pushed to the middle. Not a lot of bass on the bass drum, like a pretty good attack to the bass drum. The snare is loud, but it's also a little wet. Keyboards, guitars are not really attacking or particularly distorted. The keys are there. It seems like there's too many things in the layers. So again, that whole sort of 79 to 82, 83 period is what this record feels like to me. It's pre-hair metal, it's post pomp rock, it's AOR, but for 86, it's time has well and gone by about 4 years. I don't know if you guys have any reaction to that, but
yeah, I think they're getting all their albums out of order, like throughout this time period, right? Because they do the Bruce Fairbairn album before this, right? So for Martin, your go to Canada and try harder theme for some of these bands, they don't go to Canada, and they're doing it in the wrong at the wrong time, right? That should have been the one they did after Club Ninja, right? They were coming off a high with Martin Birch, and I feel like they go through this period of time where their records are sort of almost out of order, and I love that Canada connection that you make on that. I think that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and then Imaginos makes no sense for 1988 at all, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it even makes less sense. And then they're gone forever, which doesn't make sense either, I suppose. So
yeah, I gotta say, for your book on Öyster Cult, that was my favorite chapter, the one about Imaginos, because I never could quite understand the story behind that album. Like that didn't come with a lyric sheet, which I thought was, if you're gonna have a concept album, you shouldn't have a lyric sheet. And also, like, the order of the songs didn't make any sense, so I thought you did a great job in your book, like finally explaining the story, and now I get it. But from the album itself, the way they talk about that album, the story, it just doesn't make any bit of sense to me.
It would have been a lot better, had I redone that chapter now, it would have been even better, right? Because we know quite a bit more now. Although we didn't really have much more to build on. I mean, the lyrics are the lyrics, and that's kind of what we had, right? And everything else is extrapolation. And I've been guilty of lots of extrapolation myself. But so there you go. Let us know. Anybody else have any other comments on this record? Are we good? Can we wrap it up?
Yeah, I just people might get a kick. I've heard people talk about the album cover. You said you're just holding up as the Ninja Death Star, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's sort of this weird thing, right? This kind of combining the ninja concept with space, and there's not really sort of their ETI style songs on here. It's not that much sci-fi. So again, sort of really trying to mix things together.
Yeah. It's kind of cool that it's a club, right? It's like a big rock and dance club in space, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyways, very cool. Thanks for that, guys. That was amazing. That was a lot of cool information and a lot of deep insider stuff on this. So I didn't give my rating. I think I'm probably going to go about a 6 on this, just to be the sober guy here. So I guess we're looking at probably an average of about a 7.25 kind of thing. So anyways, there you go, folks. Let us know in the comments below what you guys think of this. Of course, we've got a Patreon and a Ko-Fi and all that stuff as well. If you join the Patreon, you can be on these panels. Marco and Grant do a good job of organizing these things and scheduling them, and you can pick panels that you want to be on for records that you guys like. But absolutely. On behalf of Rich, Matt, and Bill, very cool. Thanks for this Club Ninja panel. This was very educational. Excellent stuff. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you later.
Yep. Bye.